here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am talking with the wonderful Jon Fine, previously of a number of different bands such as Bitch Magnet, and most recently and currently of the instrumental rock trio We Contain Multitudes, who released their debut record, Minako, back in June. And in fact, I spoke to Jon for a piece for New Noise magazine, which I will link to in the description, where we talk about the album. And I should also say as well, thank you to Dan from Discipline PR for setting that up. This conversation I'm having is, in a way, sort of an introduction to not exactly a new aspect of this podcast, but like an expansion and a continuation where I'm starting to actually explicitly focus on the book that ultimately I see this podcast as leading towards. And all these sort of practical questions that I've been asking people about are sort of tying into that. So this is a little bit of a longer form interview because Jon very graciously agreed to provide insights in a more in-depth way into some of these topics. So we do talk about We Contain Multitudes. We do talk about the album, which you can get from Expert Work Records. There are indeed vinyl copies, double vinyl copies that you can get, for example, from Bandcamp, and I will put links into the description for that as well. So yeah, we talk about that. We also talk about Jon's book, Your Band Sucks, which I meant to have in my hand here to hold up, because I do have a copy, because Jon very graciously sent me a copy, and I really enjoyed reading that as well. And some of the topics that I talked with him and topics that I've been talking to people about before were really assisted by some of the stories in that book. A very insightful book about Jon's experiences in the music business. So yeah, as I said at the end of the interview, and thanked him for allowing me to take him around the houses, as we say in the UK, I took him around a lot of these practical topics. So I hope that if you are interested in the general kind of thread of this podcast being partly about exploring the practical topics of music making for DIY artists, that you will find this interesting and illuminating from all of the various insights that Jon has from decades working in the music business. And beyond that, I mean, I suppose I'm going to put more things in the description of the episode anyway, so I don't need to ramble on too much here. One thing that we do talk about in this interview, which is I'm discussing for the first time on an episode here, is the platform Ampwall, an alternative platform similar in some concepts to Bandcamp, sort of created as an alternative model for that. And we just touch on it in the episode. And basically, as I mentioned in the interview with Jon, I'd just spoken with Caroline Harrison, who is connected tangentially to this platform. I'd spoken to her the same day. The episode hasn't come out yet, so there will be more discussions to be had on the topic of Ampwall, but it's just sort of teased in this episode. But there will be more to come on that. And yeah, beyond that, I guess we can get into it. So I'm going to play a clip from a track from Minako. I will play a track at the end of the episode. And yeah, whatever other links in the description are necessary. You can check out what I'm doing musically at tomosmansounds.com. You can follow me on all social media at tomosmansounds. So, without further ado, Jon Fine of We Contain Multitudes. Take it away. Yeah, the book, Your Band Sucks.
Yes.
So apart from the fact that like I really enjoy it as a really insightful music biography, there were a couple of incidental, maybe not even particularly incidental, but there's a couple of specific things for me that I really appreciate in the book. The scene where you get back in touch with Orestes to have Bitch Magnet, I really felt that. Like I felt that kind of like the nervousness and the excitement of getting in touch and being like, what's he going to say? Is he into this? Like, should I like pretend that I'm not as into this as I am?
It's basically like asking her out, when you're 13, or asking him out or, whoever. No, I mean, so yeah, I mean, you're referring to a part where I was out of touch with Orestes and there was talk, like we were approached to reissue the records from a really good label, Temporary Residence. who put out Mogwai and Mono and Explosions in the Sky. And I didn't know how to find Orestes. And like I tried other times and it was hard. He didn't have much of a digital footprint, but I found him on LinkedIn and we started, messaging each other on LinkedIn for the first time, communicating for the first time in like 20 years. And, it's not the most, there aren't a lot of visual cues as to how the other person is thinking or feeling in an email exchange. So we're acting very gingerly with each other. And I was like thinking like, I don't know how into this he is, but he's like, well, do you think we'll get back together and do shows? And I'm like, oh, well,
Oh, what an interesting
I
idea.
hadn't really thought of that, but why not? Yeah, we could talk about that. Sure.
So between that and now We Contain Multitudes, how regularly did you stay in touch with him?
So when I got back in touch regarding the Bitch Magnet reissues, good Lord, it doesn't seem that long ago, but we've got to be talking like 14 years ago at this point. I think 2011, maybe even 2010. It might have even been the summer of 2010. It was a long freaking time ago, dude. And we've been in touch, at times with more avidness than others. But I mean, effectively, we started playing music again in 2017. And since then, we've been in pretty steady contact. I mean, like there's a very active text thread. Uh, you know, I like to say that during COVID, when for obvious reasons we couldn't get together and play because we're geographically dispersed, we weren't a band so much as we were an active text thread. But luckily now both things are going right now, both the band and the text thread. So that's good.
And what has been happening with the band?
We've, like there have been lots of little things to deal with in terms of like logistics and promotion and like the basic blocking and tackling of being in a band. And we are planning to come together for a long weekend in late September to start writing material for the new record. I've been doing a fair amount of writing, and we've got to start hammering these ideas into actual songs.
And you've obviously had various history with different labels, with the various different bands and projects that you've had over the years. I mean, and you've also, I don't know if necessarily the advantage, but the advantage from my point of view in terms of things I can ask you is that you've been involved in the music world for decades. So you were there before the online aspect became such a huge thing. And I guess you've seen a lot of changes in terms of the way that labels operate. I'm wondering, like, from your point of view now, making music, in what ways would you say it's kind of like basically the same old story versus things have dramatically changed in terms of the relationship with labels?
Wow. That's a big one. Well, the for starters, I mean, it works with either the label wants to put your record out or they don't. And I don't know a whole lot of labels at this point. I asked a couple of obvious people. They were polite and they said no. It's not the best environment for record labels right now. And then a gentleman, Dan Volahov, who's doing PR for us, got us in touch with Justin Nardi of Expert Work Records out of Columbia, Missouri, and he was really excited. Now, what's different? Oh boy. Well, I mean, let me think about this. This is the first record I've made where tape was not involved in some fashion. And there are great advantages to that. And I say that as kind of a tape purist. I like the analog. I can't help it. But
Sorry, do you mean specifically in terms of recording analog
yes.
or, yeah?
Yeah, like this is the only time when we've not recorded analog. Everything was digital. And I think the last time with Coptic Light, we recorded analog, but we bounced it to Pro Tools or some goddamn complicated thing. It was a while ago. I don't really remember. So there's that. The turnaround, weirdly, after the sort of COVID backup seems to be very fast right now. I was shocked at how quickly this came together. And I was used to this taking 6 months, and everybody basically missing their deadlines. And Smash Plastic in Chicago, like, had the records to our label like a month before release date, which is so wildly at variance with everything else I've experienced, where everything else I've experienced is like, okay, the record's going to come out in September, so we're going to set up our tours starting in October, and then you tour in October and the record's not out and it's not out till January, so you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. That happened a lot. Um, and the ongoing digitization and the algorithmic overlording of everything has had a really horrific impact on music outlets, places to write about music, and also just like labels. The infrastructure is really pretty strained right now. And, it's there's no way I can say this without sounding like I'm even older than I am, but like the degree to which Instagram is like the front door for everything just really can't be overstated. And I mean, I don't even like Instagram, but I've started following, I started paying more attention to it because I had to start a We Contain Multitudes Instagram account. That's at We Contain Multitudes Band, ladies and gentlemen, please follow. And I started following the Forced Exposure, account because I respect them. And that has been an enormous boon to my music discovery this summer. Like, they'll mention some, reissue of a jazz funk album by a guy named James Mason who played with the Roy Ayers Ubiquity. Like, it's a great album. Like, I've been listening to it a lot. So, I mean, the way that everything is different is really hard to get your hands around. I kind of don't even like talking about it because it makes me sound, ancient. I did an interview with Conan Neutron of Conan Neutron and his Secret Friends. And he was telling me that he's heard of bands like booking entire tours through Instagram DMs, which made me want to hurl myself off the nearest bridge. I mean, like, I would rather open a fucking artery than try to keep track of it that way. But I mean, is that better than like, faxing people? I don't know. Fuck. What do I know?
Yeah, I feel like that the whole matter of like whether the digital age has ended up with a net positive or a net negative is really hard to get a grasp on because there are so many different factors. It's like the stories of bands getting screwed over by labels are limitless. And I was actually going to ask you as well, because in the book there are a few stories about you, kind of, or maybe there's one particular story, I forget who the guy was, but you're trying to get royalties back. I guess was it for Bitch Magnet?
It was for Bitch Magnet. Yeah, we'd gotten one royalty check in the early 90s, if I remember correctly, like 1992, 1993, from our label, and then nothing. And the rights were supposed to revert back to us, and the guy kept pressing the records. By the way, this is Gary Held, Held, of Communion Records, Communion. He's in San Francisco. Say hi for me if you see him out there, people. And I met with him. I happened to be in San Francisco, and I met with him, and he was basically like, "I don't have any records. I don't know how many records you've sold. Sorry." Like and like he said it almost, I mean, he was somewhat friendly about it and bewildered, but he was kind of like, you can come after me if you want. I've got nothing. Like, I have no idea how many records you sold. And I was like, thanks. Cool. Thank you very much.
And in a way, that sort of answers the next question that I want to ask you, or at least part answers it. Because I
Well,
was thinking,
actually, wait, let me say this. He paid us royalties. Our European label, one of them went out of business, so that's a thing that happens. The other one, Glitterhouse, never paid us a single royalty check. I have no idea how many records we sold in Europe. We made the indie charts in the UK, so there were probably some sales, but nothing, as far as I know.
yeah.
It happens. But I mean, look, I mean, Orestes was in a band called Walt Mink after Bitch Magnet, and they got screwed by two major labels. The band Die Kreuzen basically broke up because they got jerked around by a major label. I mean, these are very common stories. But ours are nothing compared to theirs.
Yeah. And I suppose like part of the thing I was wondering about, and this sort of goes back in a way to like, I mean, it's not just around Steve Albini, but a certain kind of like mythos that does circulate around Steve Albini of being this purist of, like the major labels are wicked. You got to like stick to the underground community. But on the other hand, there are plenty of stories of bands getting screwed by non-major labels. I mean, there are all the SST stories, for example. So like, I
Those
wonder
are
if
bad. Yeah.
do you feel like is there really from an ethical point of view like a difference between smaller labels and bigger labels, or it's just a matter of scale?
I mean, the best people, some of my best friends worked at major labels. But I mean, like the best people at indie labels are some of the best people I know. But you do not have to try very hard to find stories of labels that were dishonest, didn't pay their bands, screwed them over somehow, or were kind of acting like major labels. I mean, Mark Arm of Mudhoney has a story where Sub Pop was in severe financial duress. They couldn't pay them. And Mudhoney is like, well, this is bad. And it feels weird because they're really good friends. So maybe we should find another label. And I think they went to talk to Caroline Records, and the Caroline Records were like, okay, we want you to tour 6 months out of the year, and we want you to sweeten the guitar sound. And they were like, if this is a fucking indie label, like we're going to like screw, we're going to a major label and getting major label money. And by the way, like, you can slice and dice it in a bunch of ways. The guys in Mudhoney bought houses, like, for major label money. That's cool. Poster Children, they outfitted themselves a recording studio, made themselves a completely independent entity. Like they used the major label money so that they controlled all the production, and they didn't need a lot of money. They didn't need a big advance from a major label to make another record. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, like we can tell stories on both sides of the coin, all day and long. But I mean, I will say in the 90s when major labels were coming after bands of friends I knew, not me, but friends I knew, and a lot of it didn't look so great, you know, and like yeah, a lot of them sold like I'm not going to name names, but there's one band who I was pretty good friends with, and their first record on a major label didn't do well, and their second record was supposed to sell like 400 copies. It's like, so I don't know, man. Like I am really past the point of drawing hard and fast, ideological lines in the sand. I know friends who got screwed over by major labels. I know friends who did well by major labels. I know friends who got completely screwed by indie labels and broke up because of it. I mean, not everything is the same, but I think the thing with Albini, rest his soul, obviously, was that the ideal for him was different than the ideal for the average indie band. Like there were only so many bands that could be on Discord and Touch and Go and Matador. And once you got past that and like temporary residence today, and by the way, that guy sends me like, not that we're selling a million records, but like every quarter there's like accounting, like amazing, it was a shock when I started getting it because I just had never experienced it. But it can get pretty woolly after that pretty quickly. And, I feel that we're very lucky in working with Justin from Expert Work because he's been great, So yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
really give you an answer, did I?
No, no, no.
But there really isn't an answer. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be like, blah, the major labels suck. It's like, okay, who put out all those Wire records? Who put out all those AC/DC records? Who put out Led Zeppelin? I mean, like, who put out Madonna for God's sakes? I mean, like I could play this all fucking day. So
Absolutely. And I also think as well, like that there's a danger. It's like you can create narratives when it, like, like you can kind of go like, right, okay, what is like the story that I'm going to tell here? Right. This is good. This is bad. This has worked this way. This has worked that. And you can create your story that fits within that, but it's not necessarily really going to be the whole story.
yeah, and the last thing I'll say about this was when Sonic Youth signed to a major label, it was a big thing. Worked out pretty well for them, by the way. They seem to be treated pretty well. But I remember I lived in New York, and one of the free weeklies was writing about it, and they interviewed Lee Ronaldo. And Lee Ronaldo, to his credit, said something that I'd certainly never thought of before, which is like, why does it have to be like this for music? Like no one is telling Saul Bellow that like a big publisher shouldn't put out his books. Like no one was telling, I don't know, Martin Scorsese that he has to go with an indie like studio. Like why is it only musicians? Which is interesting. I mean, but like
That is
look,
very interesting. So where do you think?
I mean, it's a fair point, but I mean, like I could play one side against the other of this like
Yeah.
all day long, and so could you, I'm sure.
Something that I've only started really thinking about recently, because I think with sort of these interviews and with what I'm trying to investigate and explore with these sort of like topics around underground DIY musicians, not completely unreasonably, I started to get quite fixated on the financial side of things, of like thinking about, artists getting screwed over by big business or major labels, which is obviously a topic. But what I've kind of started thinking about more recently is that obviously not everybody makes music or art because they expect to make money out of it. And again, I'm going to ask you a very open, big question that's hard to give a simple answer to, but what are the different reasons that people choose to make music? And I'm not saying necessarily the reasons that you chose. I mean, obviously, like some people choose to make music because they want to get laid, for example.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that didn't, I never understood that, honestly. It seems to be a pretty inefficient way to do it. That question, I think, can be sliced and diced in so many ways because it depends on what scene you're coming from. Like I'm not trying to make this sound dramatic or anything. I had to do this. Like there was a compulsion to do it. There was not a lot of free will involved. And I had to do the thing that I was going to do. I wasn't like, ooh, like I'm gonna join a blues rock band or I'm gonna go metal. Like, I mean, I couldn't do that. And like it just wasn't in me. But there's a really hilarious book. It's an oral history of the hair metal era, which even if you don't like that music, and I don't, it's amazing. For many reasons. One is that um, it is shocking how it is hilarious how a lot of those guys were not the sharpest knives in the drawer, let's just say. But you know, I, I was reading about Poison, who are, I want to be clear about this. They are a terrible band. They're a terrible band. And not only that, I think the two most inept drummers of any commercially successful band, it's either Don Henley of the Eagles or whoever the fuck plays for Poison. Like the dude cannot keep a beat and he's in a metal band. Anyway, but the guys in Poison were like, we grew up in a decaying Rust Belt town in rural Pennsylvania. Like this was our one shot. And like, goddamn right, we were going to take the shot and we're going to make it work. And like, that's not me. That's not my music. But like, I grew up in the suburbs, man. Like, I had my own bedroom. Like, I went to college. I had nothing to complain about. Like, that's a very different thing. And the crazy thing is that worked because like the odds are just really far away. Why do people do it? I mean, I think it has to be some kind of expression. You have to be drawn to it somehow. But other people do it for different reasons. Like Gene Simmons, who is not a musician I admire in any fashion. He loved the Beatles and like that was his way to become an American and like to be a big deal. And it worked. And then you get into people who get in it for academic reasons, so like who want to study it deeply. I don't know. I just know that like I had to do this sort of thing, and I happened to like to be lucky to be sort of shot out into the world as an adolescent during a moment when there was a kind of music that made immediate sense to me. Like the guys in Mission of Burma in Boston, like they were this weird, amazing art band, incredibly important band, but like people didn't know how to deal with that. And like eventually they did pretty well in Boston, but like, they were playing in a time when like you would go on tour and play like Alabama and people would get very upset, like that you were playing that music. It sounds crazy now, but it's true. So, it's really all over the map. And some people do it for Poison had to get out of their hometown. And like on a certain level, who am I to judge? I mean, I don't ever want to fucking hear any of those songs ever again for the rest of my fucking life. But it worked. So cool. I mean, terrible band. Terrible band.
You mean you don't want to hear Every Rose Has Its Thorn again?
I used to think that song was funny, actually.
I guess I'm
But
still at that phase.
well, I mean that's about as far as I can go. But I mean, but there were a lot of people like who gravitated to Los Angeles in the '80s, and I'm just thinking about it because I looked at that book recently. The book is called, of course, Poison reference, Nothing But a Good Time. You'll love it. But I mean, guys, and it was almost all guys, were coming to LA to get laid and play guitar and have long hair, and like that didn't make any sense to me, but it was a very big deal. It was a really big deal. And like there were just hundreds and hundreds of bands, thousands like that.
Yeah.
I mean, like obviously the stuff that I got into and probably the stuff you got into was set up specifically to be in reaction to how just weak and crappy and cynical that stuff was. Like they were like writing ad jingles or something. I just don't want to do that shit.
Absolutely. Like I totally relate to that. On a sort of interesting tangent to that, though, and going back to your book, another one of the things I really appreciated was how you discuss the way in which there was a time where you got into like clubbing culture. Because, like, for me, I come from that background of liking a lot of weird, like, Sonic Youth was one of the first bands that I really got into, and that sort of like set the scene for a lot of odd like alternative rock music, even though I find like term alternative kind of annoying, but what the hell? I've just given up at a certain point. I mean, we talked about like math rock before. So anyway, sometimes you just deal with the genre tags. But despite the fact that like, going through my life, I can see all this kind of like willfully obscure music that I have loved and continue to love. But on the other hand, like I went through a phase where I got really into E and going out clubbing, and like there's something about this whole world that I still kind of am fascinated by and love, even though like I'm almost never gonna sit at home and stick on a house record or a techno record. And yet it's like it would be somehow insincere of me if I was going to like characterize all of the music that's affected me and what I've been into to like say that was not a part of my life. So I appreciate the fact that I didn't expect it. So it was
Well,
kind of
thanks. Well, but it was also so I have to be the annoying like music nerd and be like, well, like I wasn't going to the big clubs. It was like, James Murphy was DJing at a bar and he was playing like really good shit. Um, but there is a scene in the book where there's this giant party. Murphy's DJing, a bunch of people are DJing. We all do ecstasy, and Love Missile F-111 or whatever the fuck is by Zig Zig Sputnik comes on, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest song of all time. And I'm like, wow, I must be tripping my balls off because I used to hate this. But I mean, in the moment, it was great. It was, I can hear it going through me right now. But that moment was personally very important because I was in my early 30s, and I had just felt that again, indie, another bad term, the indie scene around me had gotten really boring and stale and kind of like just like weak pop music, like minus, the craft that you'd find in, I'm trying to like the Raspberries, for God's sakes, like something. Um, and it just seemed really half-assed and plodding, and like no one could act ambitious and no one could act like sexualized. And it was just such a relief to like go and just like lose yourself completely and like deal with music that was all about like from here down. It was such a fucking relief. It was such a relief. And and honestly, ecstasy didn't have that much to do with it because like I did I don't know, like 5 times, but like, you'd go out and you just get like kind of obliterated on the music and you discover a new set of drugs, but also like a new set of people and a new way of being with music and a new way of understanding body music. And man, that was great. I mean, like I was driving around yesterday and I was listening to a bunch of like Egyptian disco. I'll send you a comp, but there's some cool stuff. But it's like there's something to that. But this is just something you discover if your taste broaden and if you're curious, like, the world opens up. I said that hair metal is terrible, and it is, but Round and Round by Rat, I mean, come on. That's like one of the perfect songs of the 80s. I'm sorry, you cannot fuck with that song. It is a perfect song. Um, so and you can find private press compilations of like yacht rock and like there'll be 2 songs that are really cool and weird. Like, okay, like I'm totally happy to I'm just much happier at this stage, like having a much wider aperture. And I felt like in the 90s, and this is a Jon Fine thing, but I felt that like I was just getting like tighter and tighter and tighter. And by the end of my band Vineland, like I just couldn't think of a different way to write a song. Like, and it was just making me crazy. And I was like, I guess I've kind of run the table on this one.
to your point about indie music, like all being very, I mean, you didn't say cerebral, but kind of like, not really sort of like accepting the like the physicality and the, like sexuality. I've thought before that despite the fact that I came from liking a lot of indie music when I was a teenager, these days I feel like a lot of the time I want music to be kind of sexual in some way. And this might seem like a weird band to name as a reference point to that, but I feel like if you take Killing Joke, for example, like apocalyptic band, but the guitars of Geordie going through that are so sexual. And I feel like that's kind of like, to me, a good example of like, that's something that I can connect with that has a real kind of physicality to it. Whereas like a lot of like indie rock can feel that it's just so kind of, yeah, lacking in sex. And
Well,
apparently
yeah, I
I need
mean,
to have that.
I think Killing Joke's a really great example. Like, I mean, there are hips in that music. I mean, like tension, dun 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 dun. I mean, like it's like it like moves. It's not just like bang bang bang. And like a lot of indie stuff just felt like kind of like collegiate pop music, you know, and less sexual than REM. Yeah, like the physicality was always very important to me, like very important to me. And like, I mean, it had it affected. Like my ears were all fucked up because of it, because I wanted it to be really loud. But and I just got really frustrated when it moved away from that. But I mean, I was definitely getting way up here with the stuff that I was writing, and like I was getting like probably too obsessed with time signatures and thinking that it had to be this thing. And with We Contain Multitudes, it was just a great relief to, just just really shake up the Etch-a-Sketch and like start from nothing. For that matter, like the band I was in whatever we call the first decade of the century, Coptic Light, I mean, like I was playing with a free jazz drummer. I mean, like that was just like, forget song structure, we're just gonna go. And like we kind of know these parts and we're gonna like make it happen. That was super exciting too, you know?
Yeah. And going slightly off on a tangent, I am quite fascinated in general, and also from your varied experience of booking shows. Like you talk in the book about various different tours that you've done, playing with different bands. How actively involved were you in the booking side of things? And how did you go about that? Because I've had various different stories from people of like the practicalities, if you want to book shows, if you want to book tours, how you do it.
Until Bitch Magnet got to the point where we had booking agents, I was very involved with it. And with Vineland, I was generally the booking agent. With Coptic Light, I did not all of the work, but a lot of it. With this band, I'll like, unless there's a booking agent, I'll probably do it too. So yeah, I did a lot of it. I imagine it's different now, but it was a lot of phone calls and just bugging people. And I mean, I became a journalist in my real life, and like it was very easy to go from one thing to the other. Both when I started were about calling that person over and over again to ask the question that you need to get an answer to. And like getting someone on the phone and charming them within 30 seconds and trying to like, at least get them to hear you out. If not, get the thing that you want. And if they don't have the thing that you want, maybe they can point you to someone who has the thing that you want. So yeah, I did a lot of it. I've not done any of it in this, in the last 10, 12 years. I mean, the Bitch Magnet reunion shows, we didn't really, well, I did some of that, I guess, but it was just dealing with people I knew through other bands.
And you're talking about calling venues or promoters or
Both. I mean, dude, I mean, it was 1,000 years ago. You would call the venue until someone answered the phone. Sometimes there was an outside promoter that you would call and, just get with. I was pretty, excuse me, focused on getting something in writing. And like I would have, I'd have just sort of forms saying like, we're playing, this is the show time, this is the set time, this is how much we're getting paid, and it wasn't always adhered to, but at least there was something. I was pretty ferocious about that because, it this was all hand to mouth stuff, and some people were more scrupulous than others. This never happened to me, but I mean, I'm good friends with a guy in a reasonably prominent 80s band, and they played a club in a decent sized city in America, and the guy wanted to get paid, and he goes to the office and he's like, "All right, I'm here to get paid." And the club owner didn't say a word. He just opened his desk drawer and there was a big gun in there. And my friend was like, "Thank you. Have a good night. We're going to leave right now." So, I mean, that could happen, you know?
did you, and I don't know if you can generalize this, but like when you did go on tours, would you come back feeling like you'd actually made some money out of it? Or it's basically you got enough money that you actually managed to get around from city to city?
It really varied. The Bitch Magnet reunion tours were fine. Like we came back with money. Merch sales were really good. I mean, but we were playing to much bigger crowds than we played to for most of our existence. The Vineland, we probably I don't know how it happened, but there was one Vineland tour where we came home with like a few $100, which seemed like a fucking miracle. There was one Vineland tour that was an absolute disaster, and we couldn't afford to pay each other per diems to eat, which got not great very fast. Generally, and my memory of this may be inexact, but the first Bitch Magnet tour that we did, for the album Ben-Hur in America that was like, 30 days, real venues, real promoter. I have a memory. I'm not sure if I can trust it, but I have a memory that Sue Young Park, the bassist and vocalist, sat down and we did the math when we got back and we realized that we'd like lost $5. And I wasn't quite sure how that happened. And in retrospect, I'm still not. Um, but I guess it did. We weren't exactly buying hotel rooms, like I don't, you know, we weren't buying 8 balls after the show. We weren't even buying beer, man. We weren't that kind of band. So it was fairly marginal. And Bitch Magnet's experience when we reunited, which was 2011, 2012, was like there was finally some money. Like
Mm.
not a ton, but like, enough money to do it, enough money to cover plane tickets, and we brought some money home. That was because we played the All Tomorrow's Parties Festival, which eventually went under, and they offered us like way more money than we'd ever been paid, like by a factor of I don't even know how much. It was crazy. And like that made it all possible. And plus, like, London, we did well and we sold an insane amount of merch. And like, yeah, there was some actual money. But I mean, was it as much money as I would have made if I'd stayed home and worked my day job? No.
Yeah, see the financial topic cuts in so many interesting ways, and you made a very interesting comment a couple of minutes ago where you made some offhand remark about in your real life, as in implying that the whole musical side of things is not the real life.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I mean, I'll say real job for sure.
Yeah.
But look, man, I mean, look, I'm a middle-aged man. I've had like, I'm lucky I've had an actual career. I've had serious jobs. I mean, I was doing that every day for, 20 years or whatever. I mean, I happen to be not doing it right now because I left a job fairly recently, but I'm sure I'll be doing it again. I just want that to be able to coexist with the music again.
Do you think that, and again, this is probably asking a question that can't really be generalized with a simple answer, but do you think, or at least for you personally, is it fundamentally better that you don't have music as being the thing that you financially depend on?
I really don't know how to answer that. Because, that would be the ideal, right? Like the ideal is that you do your art and you get paid enough for it to get by. And like there have been short periods of my life when that's been true, and those have been some of the happier times in my life. Um,
And you feel that you can navigate that without that compromising what you do. You're not going to be going like, oh, if I do it this way, maybe I'm going to make more money.
well, again, these were very short periods, and it was specific to like me doing the thing that I was doing, and like the stars would happen to align. Like Bitch Magnet got back together. There was some money. Like the last round of Bitch Magnet stuff, we got, sorry, recording advances that allowed us to put a few $1,000s away. As for like, but it is a remarkably insecure existence. But like my real life, did it again. My day job work is in journalism and media, which is also a very insecure existence. Music is more insecure, and you would be dependent. You are dependent on live revenues. You're dependent on merch. You're dependent on algorithms. I have friends who did very well for a few years when TV shows and movies and ads were paying a lot of money for sync licenses, and that has kind of dried up as a revenue stream. And, you know, I'm not, I have friends who are in like very successful bands who are operating on a different level. I'm thinking about the level that I would most likely be on. I like weird music. I like playing weird music. I'm not sure I could play commercial music. Like I couldn't play a blues scale for you if you asked me. I can't play metal. Um, there are actual guitar solos on the We Contain Multitudes record. I'm very proud of them, but you know what I mean? I don't really know how to do that. Like if you threw me on stage, like with a band, I talked to people like Dwayne Dennison of the Jesus Lizard, who's a trained classical musician. And like you could drop him into a country band, you could drop him into a string ensemble, you could drop him into a jazz band, you can drop him in a tomahawk, and like he'll be fine. Like I'd be shitting my pants, man. I don't know how to do that. And so I guess if you're really dedicated to it, you find ways. Like there are people I know who are not in bands that are popular, but maybe they were in an indie band that did okay. and there'll be a reunion show every couple of years that they make some money from. They are a sideman for other bands, so they go on tours that make some actual money. They sell a lot of merch. They do a lot of one-person shows. If you really want to, I mean, I don't think Mark Eitzel is thrilled at this, but if he drives himself to a series of shows that people put on in his living room, in their living rooms, like, I don't know, several $100 to $1,000 a night, like, I mean, that's something. It's fucking hard. And like I'm not, I really don't like talking about my age, but it's more of a life stage thing. Like I'm happily married. I don't go out all night seeing bands anymore. Like I'm kind of happy not to be touring a lot. I don't need to be. I spent decades, decades seeing 3, 4 shows a week. I don't really need to do that anymore, or I do. I just don't do that anymore, and I probably should, but I don't. Like I'm happy to hang out with my wife, man. And so I I have no regrets about the way it went. It it is very, very hard to do a serious, non-commercial kind of music and have that be your means of support. I know people who've made that work for themselves, and that's fucking amazing. Like I never really saw a path to doing that. And for whatever reason, and like maybe I was wrong about it, when, there were various forks in the road where it could have been, all right, this band broke up, but I'm going to do this. Like I'll play with this person, I'll play with that person, I'll get into 6 different bands, I'll be touring all the time, like I'll do a solo record, I'll figure it out. I didn't do that. Mostly because like just personally at that, like generally when like the music thing slowed down or a band broke up, it was kind of heartbreaking and I needed to pull back. And in the 90s in particular, I really needed to pull back. Like like just so much of it was breaking my fucking heart. And so yeah, like I don't have any regrets about how it went at all. And I got to a point where I'm playing with people I really love playing with, who are amazing musicians, much better than me. We made a record. We Contain Multitudes made a record I'm really proud of. So that's great because I'm typically not proud of the records I make. Like it takes a long time for me to feel that way, if at all.
Now, on that topic, in terms of the records, something I was also interested to ask you, and you probably have different answers for different records you've been involved in over the years. And you probably also have a specific answer to this based on the fact that you were committed to making analog recordings. What significance does a studio have, in your opinion, to what you can and will create?
Oh boy. Well, when I was going to college, there was so I went to a college called Oberlin, which is in the hinterlands of Ohio. A bunch of weird art kids in the middle of nowhere. We had to form our own entertainment. That meant that, the nearest city was Cleveland, where there wasn't much going on, and it was 40 miles away, which seemed really far. So, there were bands doing original music on campus. And there was an electronic music program that had all these crazy vintage synths there, ARPs, Putneys. I don't even think they had Moogs. They had really crazy shit. And so there were people I went to school with, Sue Young and Mitch Magnet, John McIntyre, who formed Tortoise, like who got really into the studio aspect of music. And I didn't, because I was really into the physical aspect of music. I wanted the live show. I wasn't really interested in the craft. And I didn't really have a knack for the technology the way those guys did, John in particular. And I wish I had learned that stuff because now I'm like, I'm recording stuff into voice memos and like going through them and like, playing loops and playing over them. And I would love to have like a little studio where I could just sort of sit down and like do stuff and like, save stuff that's not like, on my looping pedal, basically. The studio is very important. And it's important, but it's important now because the bands I was in the 80s and 90s, and even in the early aughts, were primarily live experiences and like people playing in a room together, shaping the music. And by dint of geographics, like no member of We Contain Multitudes lives closer than 3,000 miles from each other. Like we're going to be a band that gets together for long weekends and write stuff. We're going to make records and hopefully we tour. But, you know, like the studio is really important to the record in terms of like it all being digitized, not really being on the clock in the way that you were when it was only in big studios. The economics were really ferocious then. And so like there was a luxury of time and the album got much weirder and deeper and richer because of that. And that was great. And if I could do some of that at home, that would be amazing. I would still want to work with Abe Seifert, who did the record with us, because he's really great at this, and he's got much better. He's got an actual mini studio with great gear. But like, it would be really cool if I could do stuff at home. I'm good friends with Ian Williams from of Battles, and he and his wife have a small house way out in Brooklyn, and like, he has a studio in the basement. Like he does a lot of Battles pre-production stuff there. Like that would be amazing. And also, he's also really good at the tech stuff because I'll ask him a simple question about a pedal board and he'll start talking about MIDI and triggers. And I basically burst into tears because I don't understand what he's saying. But the studio is inherently different now also because, the digitization of the studio experience that started happening 20 years ago just changed everything. Almost all the records I'd made previous to We Contain Multitudes were, we have a certain amount of money, which means we have the studio for 72 hours and we've got to get it done. Like I was used to that, like, it was crazy when for the last Bitch Magnet record, like I think we did some stuff in Chicago with Albini and some stuff in New York. And like it felt like a crazy luxury, but we were with Albini for 3 days and like we recorded, overdubbed and mixed most of the album with him then. And by the way, like I kind of wish, and I'm sure Rusty's kind of wish that we had sort of a second crack at some of that stuff, but it was what it was.
Mm.
With We Contain Multitudes, like, the studio became an instrument that someone else in the band was playing in concert with us. And I finally kind of understood that. That has been sort of antithetical to my ethos all this time, but it was fucking awesome. Like, it was great. And I wish I had learned that stuff a long time ago.
Yeah, I guess once again, there's no one size fits all answer. Because while you were talking, I was thinking of, I think it's the Rollins Band album Lifetime that was recorded by Ian MacKaye. And I remember in one of Henry Rollins's million books reading about this. And basically Rollins was saying that, like I'd do a vocal part and go like, oh, can we just do that again? And Ian MacKaye would be like, nope, on to the next one. And like, there's a certain kind of, don't even necessarily want to say purity, but there could be a certain magic in just going, it's not about trying to get the perfect performance. We're going to capture what that moment was. And as long as like, the band's tight and they're good players, like you can get like mistakes, so to speak, that can still be really cool at the end of the day. But on the other hand, you can go in completely the opposite direction. You can get all kinds of amazing things that you can get out of the studio if you don't allow the options and the opportunities to completely overwhelm you and you just get lost in it.
Yeah, I mean, of course. And like, I think we all know records by some of our favorite bands that had budgets that, got quite lost in things. But at the same time, Led Zeppelin's records sound pretty good, like Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, pretty damn good record, I mean, did that really require $1 million worth of budget and several suitcases full of cocaine? I mean, probably not.
Someone thought so.
The band thought so. And the band got to call the shots then. I mean, I do remember, I'm a little torn about this. I do not want to talk shit about Steve Albini, but like, there were moments there were a couple of things in Ben-Hur where I'd be like, I kind of want to do that guitar part again. And he'd be like, man, I really don't want to record that again. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And like, because I was 22 and what the fuck did I know? And like, if that had happened now, and in fact, I think it did happen when I recorded with him again in Violent, where I'd be like, no, I want to record that guitar part again, dude. Like we're going to do it. And so, yeah, like, I mean, the resourcefulness and the scrappiness of indie-dom is like so important to me. And the fact that, I'm using we in a very grand sense, like this tribe, we're making these amazing records in like, 60 hours, instead of like, Emerson, Lake and Palmer taking like 18 months to like crap out a giant turd. I mean, like, that was really important. And like, I stand by that. But at the same time, Bob Mould hates the way that the Hüsker records on SST sound. And, he's kind of right. I mean, I love those records, but they are very strange sounding records. And, I mean, like Zen Arcade was like, I don't know, like it's in the liner notes, like they did it in like, they mixed it in 60 hours straight, or they did it in 4 days or some insane thing. Like one of my favorite songs on that record is Whatever. And yeah, and like Grant Hart like completely eats shit on a drum fill early in the song. Like, I mean, I know that. The band knows that. I mean, do most people know that? No. But at the same time, like, could New Day Rising, like that is a very strange sounding record. Like that is a weird sounding record. Like, should that maybe have sounded like a really fucking rip snorting rock band, like that was firing on all their cylinders? Like, yeah, sure. Why the fuck not? I mean, it's like if I'm forced to be pinned down to like one ethos, I'm gonna go with the indie ethos. But like, I mean, I can give you chapter and fucking verse on the shortcomings of it. But a lot of the shortcomings were coming from real places. There wasn't any money. There wasn't any time. There was one studio in the city that actually understood the crazy shit you were doing, and we're not going to totally fuck it up. And so, the choices were limited. Through those restrictions, amazing art was made. All that said, Bob Mould has a point. Like New Day Rising kind of sounds like shit. You know, it wouldn't have taken much to make that a better sounding record.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I was going back to Rollins. I was because basically as part of my life, I tend to every few weeks I drive back and forth between Oxford and Glasgow, which is about 350 miles. So it takes quite a few hours. And I decided on the last trip back up here to Glasgow because I have a CD collection of all of the first Rollins Band releases up until the end of Silence, and then I decided I'm going to listen to every. Well, I didn't start this way. I put on Hot Animal Machine, and then I was like, let's put on the next one. Let's put on the next one. Let's put
Oh
on the
my
next
God.
one.
8 hours straight of Rollins Band.
I
Whoa,
got
dude.
I got all the way from the start, all the way into Come In and Burn, which I am actually quite a fan of, even though it's got a bad rep. But at a certain point, I was like, do you know what? I think maybe it's time just to put the Rollins Band down and just like go and do something else. But I had an interesting realization when I was going through it because I had said to myself and to other people for years that End of Silence is my favorite Rollins Band album, like one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it's an amazing album, but it was interesting listening through the various different albums chronologically. I got to Lifetime and I listened through it and I was like, this is a perfect album. The performances are amazing. It's really tight. You get to hear these various different aspects of what they would go on to do. Like there are seeds of what they would explore in End of Silence, but there's an argument to say that they do it in a much more concise way. And I got to End of Silence and I'm like, I really like this album a lot still, but it does feel perhaps a little bit flabby. And it does feel that maybe they're taking advantage of the studio opportunities to like make a sort of more complicated mix in a way that's like cool, but they already made this perfect album with Lifetime. So it's kind of shifted my opinion. I still love that record, but I'm like, that other one was maybe the one though.
Well, it's really funny. I mean, how like opinions can shift, and as you think about this stuff, as you just sort of spend time with it, and you go back to stuff, and like something that, I mean, New Day Rising was a wildly exciting, such an exciting record to me when I was, like 20, and it still kind of is. But I'm like, I mean, I'm harping on it as an example for like, just many records like that. I mean, like, but there's also the dreaded lifespan of bands issue and like at what point does the creativity well get tapped out? Black Sabbath had 6 amazing fucking records before they kind of fell off a cliff a bit. And like that's a great run, you know? Even if like the like like I actually should now listen to like Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die just to like sort of re-experience them. Like Led Zeppelin, I mean, they really kind of lost their shit with In Through the Outdoor, but Page was really smacked out. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that Presence is a little self-indulgent, but I'm kind of a sucker for it.
I mean,
But I
it's
mean,
like it has a couple of their best
oh
songs
yeah,
on
yeah.
it, which
I mean,
always
I
kind
mean,
of
like, but Achilles is such a preposterous song. Like compositionally, it's like everything about it. I mean, it works because they're fucking Led Zeppelin, but I mean, that's just insanity, absolute fucking insanity. And in the same way that Carousel Alhambra off of In Through the Outdoor works, but that's also completely insane. But like these things don't. I mean, bands don't really last forever. It's like if there's a band that has 3 great records, that's pretty great. And you've got to. And if you do more than that in a row, like you're, top tier. Some bands kind of keep it together. I mean, like to me, I would be lying if I said I know every Sonic Youth record inside out. But I mean, I saw them late in their career. I know their records from the end of their career. Those are pretty good records, man. Like they're pretty for real. Like, so I'm not quite sure what I'm saying. Maybe it's not just a production choice. Maybe it's just that, like, you do the thing and at a certain point it's done.
That is a totally fair point because that was another thing that occurred to me while I was listening through all these Rollins Band albums. Was it was like whatever judgments I'm going to make comparing one to the other, it also kind of felt like they went right. We've done that. Now let's try this. Okay, we've done that. Now let's try this. Rather than going like, oh, that worked really well. Let's repeat that. So I have to respect that too.
Yeah, I mean, but you can also you can just kind of disappear up your asshole doing that because like where you just have to keep pulling rabbits out of a hat instead of I mean the, I'm only thinking of him because I just read the memoir of his guitarist, but like I don't think, someone like Tom Petty was spending a great deal of time agonizing if his next record sounded like Tom Petty. I mean, and like I don't, well, actually, I was going to say Leonard Cohen, but I think Leonard Cohen agonized a lot over everything. You know, I don't think that, I mean, do jazz guys worry about this? I mean, I really don't know. Like, I don't hang out with them. I mean, does Matthew Shipp worry about it? Did John Coltrane worry about it? Did Albert Ayler worry about it? I mean, unfortunately, Albert Ayler and Coltrane might have passed before it got to the point where they needed to worry about it. They're also just bands that are like, that we recognize as being great, that have been around for a very long time. And they've got periods that are, not that fantastic. I think David Bowie ended his career on a very strong note. Like 80s David Bowie, I don't need to hear a great deal of that. I think you'd agree with that. I mean, like, I kind of love Rush. I'm not ashamed to say that. But like 80s Rush that is a tough lozenge to to suck onto. So, it's I don't know, like, and there are so many like wild reinventions that go horribly and hilariously awry. There's a friend of mine and we have this sort of obsession with what we call like the career ending album, which is where the artist tries to do something and like flops wildly and like or alienates their entire fan base. And like the best examples of that are well, I think one of the ones is the Billy Idol Cyberpunk album, which I've never listened to because I'm kind of afraid of. Steve Miller of the Steve Miller Band did a sidelong rap called Macho City that is absolutely deranged. It is completely insane. Judas Priest tried to go synth on one album, like their fans like completely turned on that. And Discharge did that weird hair metal album. Oh, Grave New World. It's like they went straight from being Discharged to like falsetto vocals and guitar solos. And man, like there's a recording online of a show where there's in San Francisco where they do that. And like basically people just starting throwing shit at them and screaming at them and they like flee. I mean, so
Nothing could
like,
stop Lou Reed.
yeah, like I also have a friend who came up with the advanced theory, which is that like some people just do such weird shit that like you can't question it. Like, Bob Dylan, like went Christian, went electric, like whatever the fuck Lou Reed did, like those are very advanced artists,
Or Neil Young as well, I suppose.
Yeah, and by the way, I will give it up for Trans in a major way. That is a fantastic record. It's super schizophrenic because half of it is Neil Young and half of it is like his vocoder stuff. But that
Was that for his son?
he was like the greater thing behind it was that he was trying to. It came out of a thought of how he had to communicate with his son, but it just went to this very computerized synth stuff with like vocoders, and it's super cool. People were very upset about it and still were. So yeah, I mean, like they're the people that do that and get away with it. And Neil Young did that several times. Like there's he did a weird rockabilly album in the 80s, which is like it's like 24 minutes long, so it doesn't take a long time, but it's pretty hysterical, actually.
On a sort of connected topic, I'm wondering, and you probably have some particular opinions based on your history with analog music as well. I'm curious to know how you feel in general about physical media of music, and then also how you feel about the differences between different physical media.
I am one of those people who thinks that vinyl is the ultimate experience. I understand vinyl. I like the physicality of it. I like the sound of it. I'll also tell you that I don't own a turntable and I haven't owned one from a long time. Um, and like almost all of my listening, no, all of my listening is through like streaming and like an Alexa. I mean, Yeah, so I'm not practicing what I preach here at all. Yeah, I mean, the availability of so much on Spotify. Well, you and I both know that not everything's available on Spotify, but the availability of like basically everything on YouTube is, I mean, again, I hate talking about age, but like, it took me when I was in high school, I read about the New York Dolls' first album, which was then out of print. Like, it took me a year and a half to find it. And I mean, I was fucking trying, dude. I was looking for that goddamn thing, And I finally found it. And it was like, and then I like had to love it, even though it's not really my favorite music in the world. Cause like I just spent so much fucking time looking for it. Like, oh God. But I mean, like you've seen me like when the first time we spoke, like I've got a wall of records in my office, I've got a shit ton of CDs. I just prefer vinyl as an experience. But everything I do is like Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. So the economists have a term called revealed preference, where it's like, you might say that you will buy the expensive organic chicken, but when you actually go to the grocery store, you buy the cheap, chicken breast. Like that's your revealed preference. Like you might want to actually be the person who buys the organic chicken, but those few pounds, those few dollars make a difference. So you buy that. So yeah, I've got a revealed preference where like for whatever reason at this life stage, I'm much more into the convenience and ubiquity and portability um, of everything else. And by the way, don't even get me started on mixtapes because I'll probably start crying. They were yes.
Beyond the sound, I wonder if you have particular feelings about like physical media as an artifact. Like, whether it's the vinyl and it's like the ritual of taking it out, looking at the artwork, looking at the liner notes, putting the record on, turning it over. But then even with a CD or a cassette, there can still be a certain ritualistic experience to that. What kind of value do you place in that?
The To me, like it's funny. Like I think I'm obviously more people are listening to more music now than ever before, but it serves multiple purposes. And I think, when you and I talk about music, you and I are talking about listening to music. Like that is the focus. Like, it's not, I need something to, I remember like trying to, I used to hide being in a band from people I worked with because it was just much easier that way. And, eventually like stuff ended up on Google and it was generally known around the office. And like, I remember like trying to explain to these very intelligent people I worked with who are just not music fans. And they're like, so like, yeah, so like, yeah, I like music. Like I like put on music when I work out. And I'm like, no, you don't understand what I'm saying. And they'd be like, yeah, I listen to that song, but like, you can't really like work out to it. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? Why is that the thing? So, wait, how did I get started off? What was the question?
About the the
Oh,
um
yeah,
the value of the
the
ritual of the physical media. Yeah.
I always found CDs annoying. Even though like I like like, but to me, the experience of like playing the record and like look like before, Numero Group was doing these beautiful packages with like, basically 100-page books accompanying them. Like you looked at the fucking record cover, you looked at the lyrics. I mean, like that was awesome. Like that kind of like deeply analog focus was beautiful. I mean, like that is how I experienced the music that I most loved. That is how I experienced the music that shaped me. And it happens to be different now. I miss that. But, attention is such a scarce commodity. I mean, this is not a brilliant observation. Like entire books have been written about this. And we're pulled in so many directions. And like, this is just constantly tugging on us all the fucking time. And like, even when you're listening to music now, in this incredibly digitized age, that's been like this for 20 years, like if you get curious, you can just start Googling, and like, I do that, you do that. There was a beautiful purity of the experience when like you had the object and that was it. And like you just stare at the goddamn pictures. And with We Contain Multitudes, uh, I would be lying if I said I conceptualized the art. I turned that over to Adam Fuchs, who's an amazing artist. He works for the he's an animator for Adult Swim in America. But I was like, there were a couple directions we could have gone in, and like he just got it, and he just came back to me with this stuff, and like it's exactly the thing that I was hoping for, which is that like you buy the weird prog or psych album. It's got crazy artwork and you put it on and you just stare at the goddamn thing for an hour, like this crazy fucking abstract image. I mean, I fucking love that. I love that. Like that's so meaningful to me. And also a lot of big indie bands had really shitty cover art, like not my favorite band, but Soul Asylum, like replacements, like just like make an effort. It's not that hard. Like somebody who's a good photographer, like you got to know some weird art kids, guys. Anyway, don't get me started.
Gravedancer's Union had a kind of interesting cover.
That's not the one with all the feet and the nooses. No, that's Hang Time. What was great? Was that the one where like they're kind of far away?
I am not an expert in Soul Asylum. Isn't that the one that's got the kids that are walking along the street and it's from behind them?
God, I'd have to look it up. Oh, I mean, that doesn't sound terrible, but I mean, like, dude, look at their albums on Twin Tone. Look at actually, there was a recent one that they just came out with, and it was like, holy shit, like you still can't do a decent fucking record. But like, you
Clearly,
don't
the
even
commitment
know
was never
somebody who
there.
can do a decent record cover. Whereas, like all the like, I went down this weird like jazz funk like rabbit hole, on Spotify. And they started just like the algorithm just started showing me that shit. And I looking at these fucking album covers that are just like mind blowing, like the craziest, most amazing things. Unfortunately, the music wasn't all that good, but I was like, this is the album that you can stare at for an hour because it's like this crazy fucking image. And like, I fucking love that.
Yeah, I do. I really am horrified with my existence over this fucking phone. Like at the moment where I am right now, this is not my house. This is my friend's house, and he's in the US with his family, and I'm here looking after their dog, three cats, and two fish tanks of fish and other such things. And so I'm just wandering around here on my own, and I'm working some of the time, and then other times it's like there's a record player here. There's a bunch of different records I could put them on, but instead I go through the kitchen. I get my phone out and it's like, let me find a YouTube clip that I'm gonna like listen to while I'm like, why am I doing this? Why am I so obsessed with this fucking thing? It's not making my life better, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we could go for hours about that. I mean, yeah, for sure.
John, I don't want to keep you too much longer. Have you got time for a couple more questions?
I do. Yeah, sure.
Sweet. I wanted to ask you another practical question. We've touched on Spotify and something we haven't talked about at all. And I realized I haven't talked to anyone about this is Apple Music. Because I ask so many people about Spotify and about what small, meager sum Spotify pays, but I hadn't really thought about Apple Music before. Now I understand the model's a bit different. You're basically like, as a user, you buy like essentially what like you loan the music. Like I was just told this story by a friend of mine the other day about Bruce Willis, that apparently he had this gigantic, or he has this gigantic collection on Apple Music, and he wants to leave it to his two daughters, but he can't because it's basically just licensed in his name. And once he dies, like that's all just gone because that's the contract. So that's interesting as of itself, but I have no insight about what Apple pays to artists.
Unfortunately, my friend, that's two of us. Bitch Magnet, we're sloppy with our publishing. I'll know more once, the We Contain Multitude stuff like gets moving. I haven't seen a dime from Spotify, but the kind it's not like Bitch Magnet is getting, 10 million plays on anything, or that Coptic Light is getting 10 million plays on anything. Vineland, so far as I know, isn't even on Spotify, which is fine with me. Um, but yeah, I really don't know. The economics are obviously preposterous. They were always preposterous. And I mean, this just gets to there are prices that we are paying for the ubiquity and easy availability of a slightly lesser than digital product. Um, some of that is obvious, and some of that, as the Bruce Willis story tells, is less obvious.
What do you think about the like kind of going back for a moment to the question of the different qualities of sound? What do you think in general like about the sound quality on Spotify?
Well, that's a really good question. I'm probably more concerned about the air quality on earbuds, which are better than they were, but they're not great. I'm just used to them now. Uh, it again, revealed preference. There are streaming there are streaming platforms that do uncompressed they're not MP3, like they're or it's a non-compressed format. Um
They're like Tidal, I think.
yes,
I
and there's
forget if
another
it's
one.
FLAC or if it's WAV files. I can't remember.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. I'm not on those. I probably should be actually, and I should give that a shot. But again, revealed preference. Like for whatever reason, like the last 10 to 15 years, I've been much more comfortable with ubiquity and availability rather than like the better listening experience. I've got like the noise canceling AirPods, and they're good enough. I don't love listening on AirPods. I find that to be pretty frustrating. I mostly do that in the gym, and there's so much like back again listening to music when you work out. But I mean, like there's so much fucking background noise that like it's not a good listening experience. Yeah. But honestly, I'm listening on I'm listening on like an Alexa a lot of the time. I'm not listening on we have a system at home like of different speakers that's somewhat better, but it's good enough, I guess. But I've opted for a good enough system. I've never had, I mean, I really do appreciate good sound. But I've never had like a really great like stereo system. I've never been like one of those dudes, thank God, that got really into like, Macintosh tube amps and, constantly trading up to like the zero gravity or whatever the fuck they are, turntables. I mean, thank God I didn't go down that rabbit hole because like that's endless and exhausting and quite expensive. So, obviously, no matter what I say, I'm pretty comfortable with suboptimal listening experiences. But I mean, dude, like, most of my favorite records are, as we discussed, are recorded kind of slapdash and quickly. And like, some of them still sound great. Like the band Government Issue. I did a radio show for NTS. They were kind enough to ask me to do an hour long show. And I played a song by Government Issue, DC band from the 80s. Started as hardcore, became kind of like a hard rock band. And one of their albums, which I'm sure was recorded with minimal resources, their self-titled one, to me has the ultimate big rhythm guitar sound, like giant fucking chords. I don't know how they did it. It sounds fucking amazing. It sounded amazing. It sounds amazing on this thing. It sounds amazing on my earphones. It sounds amazing on a good system. It sounds amazing on the vinyl copy I have made by from on the Fountain of Youth label. I'm sure they were not, it's not an audiophile pressing. It just sounds great. Sometimes that happens. But I never got obsessed. I never acted in a way that got obsessive about that. And you know, I like some bands that are considered to sound really great sonically. Like I love Steely Dan. And I love Hüsker, and I love like all these fucking like hardcore bands that made 2 7 inches that were recorded inside a tin can, like
Yeah.
because I mean the guitar sound on the first couple of Minor Threat 7 inches is very strange. Like those are strange sounding records, man, but they're amazing, like it's sometimes that's all you need. And I guess push comes to shove, I'm looking for the essentialness of the experience. Like I'm looking for the music, I'm looking for the vibe, I'm looking for the feeling. If it sounds great, I guess it can be, some dressing on top. But, I mean, dude, like I was driving around in vans, like listening to new cassettes on like shitty van stereos for years. I mean, like that's how I experienced music.
No, I think that is a very, very fair point. I am curious to know if you have an opinion about Bandcamp. Like, what's your experience been like with them, and do you have any strong feelings about their takeover by Epic?
I mean, we'll see what it means. If I am relatively a couple of things. Number one, We Contain Multitudes is honestly my first real experience with Bandcamp. So far, it's been great. It sounds good, it works, all that stuff. I'm not going to get upset about someone else buying it unless they actively fuck up the product. There are plenty of things in the world right now to be upset about, and like I prefer to be upset about the things that are obviously upsetting as opposed to something that has the potential of being upsetting. I also don't know the backstory, and if they are now screwing bands, if like or something that's a different story. I'm not aware of any of those stories, so I've been like, what are you hearing?
Yeah, not really much. I mean, it's just basically been from talking to different musicians. And yeah, so far, all I've really had is mostly people saying, like, yeah, I haven't really noticed anything terrible happening from it yet.
Yeah.
Actually, although a slight counter to that is I have just tonight also interviewed an artist who is actually friends with the guy who created another platform called Ampwall, which just got created in the last year. And she was telling me that apparently there are certain aspects of Bandcamp that, from a sort of like a techie point of view, were not particularly. I mean, I forget exactly how she put it, but there are issues with the way that it's set up behind the scenes, and because of the size of the platform now, you couldn't really fix them without completely dismantling the
Spending
whole
$80
thing.
trillion. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And taking a lot of time.
And one of the things that she would.
But I'm sorry. Keep talking. I'm
Oh, I
sorry.
was
Go.
just to say that she said that one of the things with Ampwall is that it's actually set up so that visual artists can also put their art on there, and you can link as well. So it's like if you've got a band and you've got the album cover and it says who did that, you can click on them, and then that's going to take you to the artist, and you're going to be able to actually buy their work as well, which is an aspect that Bandcamp doesn't really facilitate.
Yeah, that's interesting. But at the same time, like as we've seen, once platforms become like a platform, it's very difficult to dislodge people from them. Like just, entire ecosystems get built around them. It just becomes an easier thing to go to. The only thing I'll say about someone else buying them is this. I used to, in addition to being in media, I used to write about the media business. And uh, there are people that own media properties. Rupert Murdoch is probably not my favorite. When he bought the Wall Street Journal, people were very upset. Um, for all of the not great things that Rupert Murdoch has done in the world, and there's a long list, the Wall Street Journal is a really good newspaper with real reporting in it that hasn't changed. And furthermore, if it had stayed owned by the family that owned it, they would have had severe cuts or gone out of business because they were losing a ton of money. So I try not to be too knee-jerk about ownership stuff until something actually happens. There are plenty of stories of like people buying shit and totally fucking it up, and then it becomes a problem. But I don't. I haven't looked at it too closely. I don't know what Epic's planning. I don't know. Like they just may think it's a cool thing. They may see something there. I don't really know. They also, to play this card, just to be reasonably fair-minded about it, like if there needs to be a massive tech upgrade, they have the wallet to be able to do that. And the previous owners of Bandcamp probably didn't. The business is a bitch and economics are brutal. What can I tell you? But I mean to go like I mean I love the idea of like all these new platforms forming.
Mm.
It's just damnably hard to get people off one platform and to go to another. And I'm the wrong guy to talk to because I mean there are like I've been on Facebook for a gazillion years. There's a coterie of about 200 to 300 music nerds of my general age and milieu who are active on it, and I keep coming back for them. They are there. They are posting like, there's one guy who's like, I just found this crazy privately pressed gospel record that was made in Detroit in 1965. It's amazing. I'm like, I'm here for that. That is fucking like, but I mean, that keeps me on Facebook, like
Yeah.
I quit Twitter a long time ago. I haven't gone on to Blue Sky yet because honestly, I'm glad just not have that in my life. I don't know, man. Like it's all this stuff is fucking hard. I mean, but I'm glad to hear about the new platform. I will check it out.
Yeah, I think from what I understand as well, it's not. There are bands that will be on Bandcamp and will be on Ampwall as well. You can be on both. You don't have to quit one for the. But I completely take your point because, like, I know that there are certain people who, if you suggest to them listening to music that's not on Spotify, they'll be like, "What are you talking about? Like, everything's on Spotify. Why would I need to go anywhere else?" It's like you introduce Bandcamp, and they're like, "The fuck is this?" So, like, Ampwall would be even another step beyond that for people. By the way, the person I spoke to is Caroline Harrison. I should just say that, so people should check out her work. She does a lot of really cool body related artwork. She's very fascinated with kind of like the manifestation or like the representation of mental and physical illness in physical forms. Very interesting, and she does a lot of designs for different metal bands, and she's
Oh
worked with
wow.
like Sun and Chat Pile and Ken
Oh
Mode
shit. Yeah.
and all
Then
kinds
I've
of
then I've
different
obviously
people.
seen her work. I'll check it out. That's really cool. Thank you.
So anyway, John, Thank you very much. I took you around all the houses because I had all these different topics that I wanted to discuss with you, and you gave me all sorts of insights. So I hope that I've done something to also like promote what you're doing as well, in amongst from leeching off the insights that I could get from you.
No, I really no. I'm happy to do this. I love talking about this stuff with people who are very thoughtful about it, which you don't always get. So I thank you for being one of those people, Tom. And yeah, I mean, like, if as you continue to work on the book, just let me know if you have any other questions. And obviously let me know when this goes live, but I'm sure you will.
Yes, absolutely. In all cases, yes. Thank you very much, John.
Cheers, man. Have a great evening.